Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video we're going to be looking at a mid-tier list for patch 7.36b, and kind of like I said before, I think in the carry one, this is probably going to be a meta that's evolving over the next weeks, even month, even if they don't drop a patch, which they might drop another C patch. I mean, you never know because they've been dropping a patch every other week, but like I said before, I think qualifiers are going on for TI and stuff like that, so they might just leave it as is for a little bit. But in any case, this is, yeah, a complex and evolving meta, so let's just get into it because there's a lot of heroes on this mid-tier list. And first, we're going to take a look at Shadow Fiend. Now, actually, before I jump into Shadow Fiend specifically, I actually want to mention that I was thinking about putting him at S, like triple plus S tier all by himself, or just like putting him up here and putting these guys down below. But I figured, you know what, I'm not going to put him alone at the top. I'm just going to kind of put him with the other typical mids. But to be honest, Shadow Fiend is the best mid right now. It's just, he's the best one. It's like pretty much not even close. And basically, I think I told the story when I was even talking about mid or carry Shadow Fiend, is that this hero like dove me. Like I've played against it a couple times. It literally just dives tower. Like if you get a raise on like a close range raise on the enemy, you just immediately win the lane. Like there's nothing they can do because then you can just chase them, you run them down, you can even dive tower, and you just get those 3 raises on them and keep raising them more, and they just die. And that's because of like the buffs that this hero's had. Now you get Necromancery automatically, which is obviously very, very good. Then you can either choose this, which this is just more minus armor basically, or you can choose this, which is what everyone is really choosing, and what is making this hero so popular mid is because once you get those 3 stacks, not only is it just doing increased damage, which it did for a long time now, it's done that for years, and that was already kind of annoying, and how this hero won the lane, if he did win the lane, but this slow now, dude, it's ridiculous. 3 stacks of slow on you in the mid lane, you can't move. You're at like 2 move speed. It's ridiculous. It's just so bad. That's why this hero can just dive. You can do whatever you want. If he gets that short-ranged raise on you, then you're screwed. So you just like have to play far away, you have to play scared. It's just the best lane dominator, and then you kind of can choose to go whichever build you want. You can go for that magic damage build, you know, the alt build, which is really good right now, and you can definitely do that. Or let's say you just want to go the right click build, maybe you're in a lower MMR and you feel like that magic damage build isn't going to be as good as it, you know, would be maybe in a higher MMR where you can snowball. I mean, you can definitely snowball in a low MMR, but you know what I mean, like you're not going to be taking towers as well as you would with a right click build. So you can kind of go either one, and it's definitely, both are definitely viable. Like it's completely viable to do either one, but it's just that you are going to dominate the lane. I would suggest like watching a replay or something of someone dominating a lane, some high level replay of like what they do, because this hero, if you know what you're doing and positioning correctly and trying to hit those raises, you're just going to destroy. Like I've seen Shadow Fiends, you know, just the enemy mid can't come back to the lane after like the first few waves because they just get raised to death. And if the hero's just diving tower and still getting those raises off and still killing you, like it's just ridiculous. So that's Shadow Fiend. It's really just that simple, honestly, is that this slows now and he dominates the lane. I think that's pretty much as good as like it's really not that much more complicated than that. And the hero, like all the stats and everything are really good because it does right click damage and magic damage, a little bit of everything, which is always what you want from a mid. Then we have the next 3, which you could controversially say they're lower or higher. You know, you could put Shadow Fiend at the very top, like I said, but I'm going to put these other guys here just because I think, you know, I'm going to give it some diversity, give it a little bit more in the S tier, because you're not going to be picking Shadow Fiend every single game. It's probably going to get banned out a lot of games, like in people's bans, or just like people are going to pick it because it's so good. So I'll just give kind of credit to these other guys, which they're pretty good right now. And honestly, with the Spirit Heroes, sometimes you can't really tell how good they are because so many people play them that it kind of tanks their win rate a lot. But in any case, next would be Tiny. And this hero has just been very, very good for a long time. It just feels like it's always a decent mid right now. And I'm putting it up here because it's getting picked a lot. It's getting a very high win rate. And it is kind of more of a carry these days, but that doesn't really matter because that carry version of Tiny, where you're kind of going more for the right clicks, you're going for the shard early, all that kind of stuff, that doesn't mean you can't go for this normal, you know, the maxing avalanche, the maxing toss build, and then you can even go into more of a right click Tiny if you want to. It also helps that this is one of those heroes that just got more stuff. I mean, part of the reason that you're able to play carry Tiny is because this craggy exterior passive is just so good. Well, it's still good with mid Tiny as well. This crash landing facet is pretty good. This insurmountable facet is also good. These things are just straight up good no matter what position this hero is being played in. And so you can still do the going blink first, the maxing out the damage spells, doing insane amounts of damage, kind of transitioning into ags or whatever you want to do. That's still completely viable on the hero. So it kind of does all the same stuff that it used to. It's just a very, very good and powerful hero right now. That's really the long and short of it. Then next we have Ember Spirit. This hero is really, really good because you can have this double impact facet now, which basically just gives you an extra sleight of fist on one target. And that's really good mid because if you only target that one hero, like if you don't target the creeps, you're getting like a free sleight of fist on them, which can be insane and actually snowball the lane out of control, which is the one I think people are picking more. This Flame Guard is obviously really good because it just gives you an extra free level, which is always good to have a free level. Maybe not as good as getting just like a free new thing that some of these other heroes have, but this is still good. And then people are also sometimes picking Chain Gang, which is good maybe a little bit later than in the game or whatever, than the double impact or the double impact, because Chain Gang just basically upgrades Searing Chains to hit 3 people, and you can actually use it and hit people when you send out a remnant. So it's possible to like send out a remnant, Searing Chains, and like catch people without having to do this sleight of fist chains combo. So it just allows you to even do more high skill ceiling stuff with the hero, which is already one of the hero's like main abilities, is that you can just do so many things. Now you can even like send out a remnant, TP back to base if you're low, recharge, and you can still have impact in the fight because you can Searing Chains from the base and actually still chains people and like lock them down, and then come into that remnant, you know, use your activate and like teleport back from the base, still regenning up, and then hit them in Flame Guard and Sleight of Fist and all this crazy stuff. So there's so many different things you can do. You still get the Ags, you still can get the Shard, you still can get Mage Slayer in those games that you really want a Mage Slayer. You can still get the Maelstrom and all that stuff, Gleipnir. It kind of is the same way in the build that it's always been for the last few years or patches or whatever. It's just another one of these heroes that has, you just got extra stuff, which is great. And then lastly, we have Storm. I was debating putting Storm up here because it did get a little bit of a nerf, but I'm actually still going to put Storm Spirit up here because I think for general pubs, this hero's win rate has gone down a little bit, but in general, no matter kind of what MMR you are, this hero is kind of a menace. Like, it's really just a pub stomper. People don't really think of Storm Spirit as kind of being a cheese hero, but in a way it actually kind of is, because there's just a level of coordination that you have to have in order to like deal with this hero, and if you don't like properly position and understand the map, you are just going to get picked off. It's kind of like a Legion commander mixed with a like a normal spirit mid hero. And I say Legion commanders because, you know, you're going to go that Orchid build a lot of the times these days because you want to snowball those kills because of the regen that you're getting. And then either one of these facets is pretty good. People are picking this to dominate the lane, but I honestly like this one just because you don't have to think about it. It just amps up later in the game when you get the Ags and things like that. But the reason that I say Legion Commander in terms of picking people off and stuff, because you're going to be going Orchid, is that you just, if somebody is out of position, you can kill them and just bring them full to zero, and there's not much the enemy can do unless they have a lot of backup. So they have to kind of run around as 5, like they would with like a Legion Commander. They can't just sit alone and farm a side lane because you're going to jump on them from a very long distance. And so that really, really makes it hard for the enemy to play. And if you're playing a bunch of bad players that don't understand the map, you can just snowball the game very easily. And if you're, you know, if you're playing good players, then they have to group up, then you can split push them to death. And there's so many different things and dynamics that you can do. You can jump people in, you know, from so far away with this hero, especially if you snowball and then you get all this regen, that it makes it so much harder to play from the enemy's perspective. And this hero really changes the dynamic of the game because the initiation range that this hero has is just like any other hero in the game, really. So even though it's not technically a cheese-ish hero, it is very cheesy when you get all this regen, you snowball the game, you get that Orchid, you do all this stuff, and then late in the game, like I said, with the Ags and with the Shard and with the Shock Collar, you can just do ridiculous amounts of damage. And then for A tier, we have Invoker. Nothing crazy has changed about the hero. He has like all the same abilities, and he does the same kind of style of play. He gets an Ags and he just deletes people with Chronosphere or something like that if you have that pairing in the game. But the main thing that has helped this hero become better is that now he's even more of a lane dominator than he was before, because he gets XP on denies. So if you're able to deny, which this hero can get a pretty decent damage advantage in lane, and he has this little dude that he can spawn next to him to deny runes and all that kind of stuff, you can really, really snowball the lane even harder than you ever were able to before, which is really really good on the hero, and that's kind of the main thing that has like catapulted this hero up to A tier. Otherwise, like I said, he kind of does the same stuff. And that's similar for Leshrac as well. Does all the same things that he used to do pretty much, and almost just as well. It's just the main thing is that now he can get mana restored on attacks, which is going to be great because this hero is so reliant on mana. It's like you deal out as much damage as you can with all the mana pool that you have, and honestly, you kind of run out of mana sometimes, still having health to spare, and you don't really love doing that. So the more mana you can have, the more damage you can deal. It's just, that's how the hero works. And then the other thing is that as you gain intelligence, which you're going to be buying a lot of these mana items and so on and so forth, your AoE of your spells is going to increase, which is just going to be good. So those two things were just added to the hero, does all the same stuff, but is now better. I do think they actually nerfed it in the last patch or two, and so otherwise I think it might have been S tier, but it has come down a little bit from there because of that, but it's still very good. Then again, same thing with Puck. Puck is pretty good, does all the same things that Puck does. It's just that now you can, whenever you dodge a spell, you get a little bit of mana and health back. So it's like another one of these heroes that nothing was crazy changed. It's just that you got a little bit of extra stuff, a little bit more than what you had before, and so you're still good at doing all the same things you always have done, but you're just a little bit better at it in general. And then we have Primal Beast, and this is another hero, does all the same kind of stuff. It's just, he basically got free damage to buildings, which is really good. Because this hero wasn't really like a damage, a building taker, a right clicker to buildings. Like you can right click people and stuff sometimes, but it wasn't like the main function of the hero. It was more about like running around and constantly fighting with those low cooldown spells and using your ult a bunch and trampling people, which is sort of like a right click but not really kind of thing. But now you can actually deal damage to buildings. So it's like you can take the mid tower if you're not ganking and the enemy's trying to gank or something like that. Or you can even help push even more when you snowball the game and you have a really good team fight in front of a tower. You can actually hit the tower and do some damage. He's kind of like a Tiny in that way, which I think is the main thing that allowed him to get buffed up and be a little bit better. He also, his facets aren't really that interesting, but they are pretty good. So it's just another one of these heroes that, and you kind of see the theme throughout, you're going to see that throughout these tier lists. Any hero that has just got free stuff is going to be pretty good, and Primal Beast is one of those. Then we have TA, and TA is a great carry right now. Also a very good mid. Just not as much of a mid as it is a carry. It's just like more of a carry in general, but you can still play this hero as a mid. It's still very, very good. Just overall a broken hero. So it's just a matter of what role and what position does it play. And right now it's kind of tending towards playing more of that carry position because it really does want to farm quickly, be in the jungle, and you're just not ganking. And these days, you know, a lot of these other heroes, you can do a lot of late game damage, you can farm very easily and very quickly, but you're also going to be focusing, or you're going to be able to gank and respond to other ganks and all those kinds of things. TA really isn't like that. I mean, she can do it, don't get me wrong, but you're more about setting up traps in the mid lane, kind of like farming jungle and stuff like that, and so that's just not as viable in the mid lane. You can still definitely do it, like I said, but it's just, that's why it's only A tier, not S tier, because this really is a broken hero. So otherwise it would be S tier if it was more of a mid hero than it is a carry right now. And then the last two, these are just more cheese picks. I mean, Arc Warden has like the highest win rate on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, I think, but it's not getting played a lot, but as a mid, it seems really good right now. Again, it's kind of like Invoker in that way that I'm not an Invoker player, I'm not an Arc Warden player, so I can't speak to exactly, you know, how good this hero is, especially because it doesn't get picked very much. People aren't spamming it. It's just like if you're an Arc Warden player, you'll play it. So it is pretty good for the people that play it, but otherwise, I mean, I haven't seen it very much. It's not getting spammed. It's not super popular right now, so it's hard to say, but I'm putting it in the cheese tier, A tier. And that's the same thing with Broodmother. Broodmother's on the upswing, on the rise. I've seen it being picked as a carry, as a mid, as an off lane. It is good. For sure, it has a good win rate, but again, not getting picked a bunch. Like, it's not as popular as maybe it was a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, when we were seeing it picked all the time. People were playing it a ton and it was super broken. I think it might be broken. I think people are going to end up seeing like, yeah, Broodmother is a really good hero this patch. I just don't think people are like, what? I think people are still experimenting. I think all the Brood players are still like saying, oh, I want to play these other fun things. And then once they realize, oh wait, Brood is actually really good, they're just going to settle in and we're going to see more Brood. Unfortunately, that's the case because, I mean, I don't think any of us really loves playing against Brood, but it is what it is. I think Brood's pretty good right now. Then moving on to B tier, we have a ton of heroes in this B tier, and so I'm going to not try to spend too much time on any individual one. I'll probably spend more time on these front ones here because these back ones are more cheese heroes. But let's just start with Void Spirit. You could maybe make an argument that Void Spirit is A tier. He is very, very popular right now, but his win rate is a little bit lower than the rest of them, so that's why I'm putting him in B, but he could definitely be argued to be A. He's pretty good right now. And really, the thing about this hero is that he got like free stats. Now, well, it's not like free stats, but the effect of the stats that he gets is just better. So another hero that just got free stuff, like that's really, really good. Even his facets aren't the best, but they are a little bit better than what he had before. So another hero that just got a bunch of free stuff, and that's really good, just makes the hero good, but otherwise doesn't do anything crazy different. He just does the same Void Spirit stuff that he's done for a long time. Then Pango is a kind of a weird one. This hero was very good last patch, has been good, seems like forever. Like even when it gets nerfed and you think it falls off, like when they changed Swashbuckle to be from like 4 to 3 hits or something like that, but do more damage, people thought like, and me included thought, it's not going to be good, but then it ended up coming back in the meta and being insane. It's another kind of situation where this hero is still very, very good. They basically gave it this weird passive where percentage-based stuff doesn't affect him as much. So like if you have a crit chance or whatever, you're going to crit less on Pango. It's just kind of odd. And he also gets like double jump and other things like that, that if you want to pick those, you can. But he doesn't get any like super negative thing. Like there wasn't any crazy nerf, and he did get some bonus stuff for his passive and his facets. So that's always good. He's just kind of middle of the pack in that way, but he is a very good hero. Then Zeus is here. I think otherwise Zeus probably would have been A or even S tier at the beginning of the patch because they didn't really do anything crazy to him in the first 7.36. But then with the later patches, they kind of nerfed the crap out of him. They made the right-click Zeus not a thing anymore because I think you can't really buy Manta anymore. So now it's just the magic damage build Zeus, which is still actually pretty good. It's just the problem with that is you're using your spells to farm or you're using your hero to farm all the time. You can't push waves with the Manta as much, which really kind of makes you not farm as quickly. It just takes that dynamic away from the hero, so it makes him not as good, but he's still definitely solid, especially in your pubs. If you're just like an average MMR player, he's still very, very good, easy to play, and insane just buying the normal magic damage items. Like you can still go that was even viable before. Like even when the right-click build was kind of the thing to do, this magic damage build was still 100% viable, and it still is, and it's still very good. Then we have Queen of Pain. Nothing super crazy about the hero, just got a little bit of like a weird blade mail effect on the passive, and then also gets some spell lifesteal and stuff like that. Still a decent laner, kind of does all the same things that Queen of Pain has done for a while. You can get tanky, you can go right-click build, your shard is good, your Ags is good, all this stuff is good. It's just not like as good as maybe some of these other heroes, these spirit heroes, and that always feels like it's the case. It always feels like Queen of Pain is decent, but she's just never as good as like the other good spirit heroes or Puck or Leshrac at the time. So it's kind of just like a default pick, middle of the road, if you want like a average mid laner that you can pick almost every game because it never gets banned, no one really picks it. You could probably pick Queen of Pain and play it every single game and be fine and get good at it and stomp games if you know what you're doing. Then we have Lina. I actually really personally love Lina right now. I really, really like it. It's just the win rate is actually not that great in pubs, in high-level pubs at Dota 2 Pro Tracker, or like even on the Trends tab. It's not the best in terms of win rate, but I think that's because a lot of people spam it that are not very good at it. But really the thing about this hero is now you just basically get your attack speed level 1 for free, so you're able to take the attack speed, which you already have, and then pair that with the Dragon Slave level 1, so now your level 1 laning is just actually really, really good. It's way better. Then you also can get the burn damage over time on your abilities, which helps you, clear through creep waves faster, and also obviously do harass damage more, which is insane. So now you're like dragon slaving people level 1, you're clicking them down even faster. It's just very, very hard to land against this hero that has insane range, and you can go for that magic damage build or the right click damage build, kind of like the SF. So I would think of Lina like a discount SF right now in that way. And either one of those builds is definitely viable. So that's Lina. Next we have Wind Ranger, kind of middle of the road hero overall, pretty good. I already talked about this hero as being a decent carry right now, and this hero is also an okay mid. I think maybe it's better in the off lane or the carry position than it is mid, but you can definitely still pick it mid. It just has a little bit of a harder time laning because you just kind of have power shot to do damage and to secure last hits, and you're not really like a stack clear. You're not going to go stack the lane or the camps for yourself or anything like that. There's just some awkward things, but you can definitely lane in certain matchups really well, and if you get a decent start, you can go gank people and you can kind of snowball and have a decent game overall. So Wind Ranger, there's nothing super complicated or different about the hero, but it is a decent hero. And again, the one facet where you're like doing spread damage, that's just not a viable thing, I think, at all in any of the roles. So don't, if you were wondering, no, this isn't like, oh, the mid roll is where you pick the spread damage one. No, that's not the case. Then we have OD, which I personally, another hero I really like. I think OD and Lena are really good right now, but their win rates just aren't the best. And in some specific situations, they're not great. Against like a Nyx or something, OD kind of gets destroyed. Stuff like that. But I think overall this hero is pretty good. I mean, you get that tankiness from the one facet, or you get the more like just snowballing mana from the other one. And overall, I think this hero is really good in pubs, especially average pubs, because people just don't know how to deal with the right click damage that is coming out of this hero. And because you can get really tanky and you get your ags and stuff, and people don't kind of realize that gives you just like an extra life in this way, you can snowball the game out of control. You do insane right click damage. You can just dominate games with this hero. It is almost a cheesy hero, I would say. I almost would put it over here with the cheese heroes, but I kind of put it on this side because it's like half and half. And then I'm going into like the more melee heroes. If you want a real like melee mid that isn't, I mean, look at these. There's really no melee mids other than Tiny, Primal Beast, and then we're going with Monkey King, which is more of a right-clicker melee one. I don't know. It's kind of awkward. You can definitely pick it. It's been kind of a mid that's been hanging around in the meta here and there for a few years, and now it's kind of back to being decent, but it's not the best. It's just like certain matchups you're just going to have horrible times. You just really need to be careful about that if you're going to pick Monkey. And then Bounty Hunter is a very interesting one. I've seen this in some streams where people are going Bounty Hunter mid, and they're just like spamming Shuriken Toss, and they're running around the map getting kills. Not 100% sure how good the hero really is, but I do know people are experimenting with it. They're trying it out. They're picking it more these days. And so look for this hero to kind of be on the upswing and be pretty good. I'm putting it at B tier right now based on the win rate, based on what I'm seeing with it. But who knows? This hero could be one of those where people realize, well, actually, this hero's broken. That kind of happened with SF too. Like SF, when the patch first dropped, people were experimenting with it. They were like, oh, this hero's pretty good. But then over time, people realized, wait, this hero's actually insane. This slow is ridiculous. And then over the past few weeks, it's just been like, wait, no, this hero's actually insane and the most broken hero in the patch, honestly. Bounty could kind of become one of those. So just look out for that. I'm not going to kind of say too much more about it, but it is definitely viable. It is pretty good right now. Then we have the cheese heroes. Like Keeper of the Light, you can play it mid. It's okay. It's not the best. There's nothing crazy to say about that right now. Meepo, again, I kind of already talked about this in the carry tier list too. Just a decent hero, not the best. Lone Druid, not getting picked very much, but when it is picked, it has a high win rate. That seems to always happen. You know, if you look at the trends tab or Dota buff or anything like that, this hero always has an insanely high win rate, but that's because it like never gets picked. So it's just a little bit awkward. You know, with the facets and stuff, both facets are a little bit weird, so it just feels kind of unsure, but I'm going to put it here just because it seems like it's a decent cheesy hero. Same thing with Visage, kind of weird. Along with PL, it was one of those heroes where they were kind of allowing you with the facet to just not have to care about your birds. I don't really know how good that is with Visage. I know with PL it's very good as a carry. With Visage, I'm really not sure how good that build is. I think it's okay, I'm not sure. But overall, with the win rate and the pick rate, it's definitely viable for B tier for cheese heroes. And then lastly, to comment more on Tinker, I'm actually putting Tinker in the B tier. And that's because, you know, everyone knew that it was terrible after the 7.36 patch, and then it got buffed twice in a row with A and B patches. And even though I think in the B patch some of the buffs were a little bit weird, like with the cooldowns, it didn't really matter, overall people have kind of seen that, okay, well, if you actually get a blink, once you're like, you know, past 20 minutes, you have some items, your blink cooldown's maybe only 4 seconds or something like that. Maybe it's only 5 seconds. That's actually pretty good. And so you don't maybe need to even refresh your items, because if you didn't know, you can't refresh items anymore, which is kind of insane. And so you can buy all these other things like Ags and stuff that reduces mana costs and all that kind of stuff. Your cast range can go up. And the fact that you can't refresh doesn't matter as much because you can still cast all those things. As long as maybe you're not doing the hex thing where you're just like hexing people permanently because of the refresh, but you can still buy like Ethereal Blade and some of this other stuff, and you have pretty low cooldowns. So that's definitely viable. Now you can farm a lot faster because you have March back. So it is kind of this hero that is semi-viable. I've seen it do decent sometimes, but again, it's one of these weird heroes. It's not getting picked a bunch. The win rate's still pretty bad. People are experimenting with it being potentially a support, but I think it's definitely better than what we were initially giving it credit for when the patch first dropped, mainly because it got some buffs and people figured out that actually the refreshing of items isn't the biggest of deals because of the passive now. It's actually a little bit better than we thought. But I'm not ready to say that that this hero, like, I still think it should be changed. I still think the main problem with the hero is they just need to get rid of the stupid shield. The shield is just extremely annoying. Personally, I hate it. That's just my opinion. Why don't they just bring the old Tinker back, keep it as it is, but then just replace the shield with a rocket? Like, getting rid of rocket just feels awkward too. But regardless, with how much hate this hero got and that change got, it's actually not as bad as we once thought. So that's B tier. Next, we're going to go to C tier. All these heroes are just like kind of okay. Earthshaker, I mean, I guess you can pick it. It's getting picked a little bit, has a decent win rate for when it's getting picked, just not much. So you can definitely still pick that mid. Kunga kind of fell off a cliff, but you could potentially still pick it mid. It's just not the best anymore. You know, it was a very good hero, and now it's just pretty much dead. But it's still like semi-viable, I guess, especially because the mid version of the hero is more like right-clicking in a way, not just that like complete control, which seems to be completely dead from the hero. Dragon Knight was actually really, really good, but then they nerfed like all of his facets because they seem to be broken, so I think that hero kind of fell off a cliff. I already thought that the hero wasn't that good personally, but then the win rates of the facets were just really good, so I just kind of was like, okay, even though I personally don't love the fact that they nerfed the Ags into Oblivion late game, it just feels bad in that way. You know, that early game snowball, those facets were really good with the poison and with the slow and stuff, so I was going to give it credit, but then they nerfed a bunch of those, so now I think it just fell off that cliff. Winter Wyvern, you can still play that right-click version of Winter Wyvern that's been around for a while. You can still do that mid, it's just not the best. Timbersaw has kind of fallen off a lot. It was hovering around A and B tier there for a while. Nothing crazy new with the hero, honestly, and that's one of those things is whenever there's nothing crazy new about the hero, it seems like they just are not as good as some of these other heroes that have gotten a lot of like free stuff, and that's Timbersaw, just nothing super interesting about the hero. Then Pudge is a good hero right now, but I think mid is probably its worst role, honestly, because you're kind of relying on getting these weird hooks and getting people out of position and snowballing with these ganks and stuff, and if you just think about it, like you're a melee hero in the mid lane, and you're just going to be dominated by a lot of the stuff that's you're going to be right-clicked a bunch, and yes, you're pretty tanky, but you're relying on kind of a cheese strat, and then even when you go gank, which you definitely can do, you're not like blinking in or something like that. You don't have any mobility spell. You're just kind of relying on just like surprising somebody or hooking them out of position, which isn't always the best, so that's why it's kind of like all or nothing with Pudge mid. Then we have kind of cheesier heroes. Huskar's a cheesier hero. It definitely is good in some games, but can be a little bit awkward. It just depends on whether the disarm or the silence is good. Sometimes the silence can be really good from his Q now, which it used to be a disarm, and sometimes you really want the disarm, now you don't have it, and it just feels really bad, and you just die in 2 seconds. So that's honestly the big difference there. Then Bat Rider. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on Bat Rider, because this hero now has a damage over time on his right click. It just feels kind of very powerful, but I'm surprised actually because the win rate's not that good, the pick rate's not that good in pubs, and I'm just questioning why, because I feel like the pros or the higher MMR players, I mean, not that I'm gonna like tell them what to do, but I think this is like a hidden gem kind of hero, where this hero is a little bit more broken than people are giving it credit for, because they just don't want to like play bad, I think, or maybe it's just because, you know, Bat mid, you're still relying on like just having a lasso, and that's all you do a little bit later in the game, which having, you know, one of these other heroes up here, they do a lot of right click damage and spell damage, all that kind of stuff. Bat Rider just feels one dimensional, so maybe that's why. I think it's maybe a better off lane because of that, but still this hero can feel pretty powerful and annoying, very snowbally, very cheesy, but still very, very good I think right now. And then Earth Spirit, not too much to say about this hero. It just seems decent right now. They didn't change anything crazy. They nerfed it actually with like the cooldown on the stone and stuff like that. It was just very weird and very awkward, but then they buffed it to make it a little bit better in this last patch. So now it's a little bit more viable. I'm just putting it here like kind of as a afterthought cheese pick, because it does have a very good win rate when it is picked. It's just not picked very much, so it could just be a small sample size, and actually maybe it's like D tier or something like that, so just keep that in mind. But that's why I put it here, just to like talk about that as potentially being a viable hero. Then lastly, for the, you know, the semi-pickable viable heroes, we have Clinks, who this hero is kind of on the upswing, but not really a mid. I just think you're going to get dominated in a lot of matchups. You have relatively low HP for the most part. Like, you don't have your good wave clearing spell until level 15 or a minute 15 when you get your shard, and so it just doesn't feel great. Like, yeah, you could get your Orchid and run around ganking, but again, you're waiting for an Orchid to gank. Like, it just feels kind of awkward because of that. Necro, more of like an off lane right now, not as great of a mid, gets dominated in a lot of matchups. It just can't abuse some of the things that he likes to abuse from the mid lane. Just feels a little bit awkward. You can definitely pick it, but it's not as good. Magnus kind of is a weird hero because reverse polarity is garbage, and so why would you ever pick that? And whenever you have one thing that's absolutely garbage, your other thing better be really good, but it isn't really. Like his passive and his other facet don't do anything crazy new that, like, all these other heroes that got free stuff, he didn't really get anything free that was good. So you can still play a mid, you can still, RP people, you can still skewer people under tower. That stuff can all still happen. It's just not as good as some of these other heroes. Razor kind of falling off a cliff. This is one of those heroes where I feel like it's just so boring. And another hero that didn't get anything special, like he didn't get anything new. His movement speed was just like moved to a passive or whatever. This is one of those heroes where, because it is so boring, get some nerfs or whatever. In the new patch, people stop playing it. They're like, forget about Razor. We don't want to touch this hero. And then, like, over time, things kind of even out. And people are like, well, actually, stealing all the damage from people is actually pretty good. And then it kind of, like, rises back up in the ranks. So right now, it's all the way down here. We'll see if that changes at all in the coming month or so. Then DP, actually, interestingly enough, I think maybe this hero is just more of an offlane in general. But whether it's offlane or mid, this hero doesn't seem to be very good right now. Like, I kind of expected this hero to have more of a rise in the meta with, like, the ultimate now just being better with heroes dying, and that you get them in your ultimate. That's kind of cool. And I feel like that can feel kind of powerful, but I don't know. There's something weird about Death Prophet that just, like, it's just not been good for so long. I think it was good for forever. It was, like, always a good offlane pick. It was just very, very good. And now it seems like it's been dead for like a year. So I'm not really sure what it's going to take to, propel this hero up into the higher ranks. But I feel like we haven't seen this hero around for a very long time now. So I wonder when that'll happen. Right now, it's just not very good. Pugna, not very good as a core. Really, it's kind of even dead as a support. Not much to say about that. I mean, you can still try to pick it. They've been trying to buff it in weird ways to make the core, the mid Pugna, more of a thing, but it just doesn't feel good. Not really a thing. Dazzle, it was good maybe, 6 months ago when it was the Dazzle mid patch. Maybe it's still viable in certain situations, but it's not great, especially because Axe has been a very good hero for a little while now, ever since the patch, and obviously just destroys Dazzle. So not a great hero mid. I wouldn't pick it very much. Viper kind of got a little bit of a buff in the B patch, but I don't think it's enough to really make the hero good. It feels very one-dimensional, very slow. A lot of these other heroes are getting more ability to farm, more mobility, all these things that are just added on top of it, and Viper just feels like it didn't get that much love. It kind of does the same thing as always. Alchemist, I'm putting this hero here because I think it's actually a decent hero right now. It's just that you're just farming mid, and that always feels bad because you're not going to be ganking. You're just going to be farming stacks. You're just going to be passive for so long that all these other heroes can do a lot of damage, farm, and do all those things, but they're going to gank more than maybe you would on an Alchemist. And then lastly, for semi-viable heroes, you can still pick Sniper, I guess, but this hero is like dead compared to what it was, a few months ago before the big patches. This hero was kind of like shining. It was up in the A tier, maybe even S tier in some brackets or whatever, and now it's just kind of gone. It might be kind of Razor syndrome in the sense that people are just sick of Sniper and they just want to get rid of it, and they just don't even want to touch it anymore. They're like, forget this hero. Maybe it's semi-viable still, but they just hate it now. That could definitely be the case, but I actually think it's another one of those cases where it didn't get very much love. The one facet is the worst facet in the game, so it just taking all those things into consideration, it's not that great of a hero. And then lastly, for heroes that are really not viable, Snapfire, terrible right now, absolutely terrible as a core. Tusk hasn't been a mid for a while. I could probably take this off the list, honestly. Same thing with Gyro, very awkward. What are you going to do, the Alchemist farming build? I don't know. You're going to be a carry from the mid? Not really. Are you going to do the magic damage? Not really. You're probably just going to be better as a 4 position from that vantage point. And then Skywrath Mage just all in on the magic damage. Like all these heroes that do magic damage, like even like a Puck, they can scale into right-click damage more. Like, people think Storm is more of like a magic damage dealer, or Queen of Pain is a magic damage dealer, but they actually have very good right-click abilities, and like Storm, you want attack speed, you want to right-click more, you're not always just relying on magic damage. So Sky's just all in on the magic damage, and that never feels good. I hope they try to buff this hero and give this hero some kind of love in the mid lane or something like that. Another one would be Silencer, which I don't have on here. He would also be F tier. It'd be cool to see those heroes like come back as some kind of viable mid. I don't know how they're going to do that. Making Skywrath right click be a thing. I mean, they already did it to Zeus, so why not do it to, why not do it to Skywrath? Like, who really cares? If you're giving Zeus right click, just give Skywrath right click abilities. Like, come on, just do it. So anyway, that's F tier. That is the mid tier list for patch 7.35. or 3.6b. Sorry about that. And yeah, like I said, who knows? We'll get another patch in 2 seconds, and the meta will change in 2 seconds here. It just keeps evolving over time, but that's how it stands currently, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you think things should be higher or lower, or what you're seeing with the meta. Let me know about Tinker, what you think. That's always interesting to see what people think about that. And as always, guys, if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.